I'd like to welcome Ndidi Dike to the Phillips Collection. Ndidi Dike is a renowned contemporary artist based in Lagos, Nigeria. Ndidi is creating a new work called The Politics of Selection for a forthcoming exhibition at the Phillips Collection. Over the decades, her work has evolved into a multi-dimensional, multimedia practice defined by experimentation and social engagement. Why is it so important for you to identify yourself publicly as a sculptor?
I think the reason behind that is that earlier on in my university days and when I had decided that I would want to be an artist, I can remember the decision to even be an artist at that particular time was not sort of like highly regarded. We're talking about the mid-80s or so. When I left Nsukka, I decided I wanted to be a sculptor. That had a bit of challenges because coming from a patriarchal society, I mean, sculpting was considered to be the preserve of men. I feel that my early days as a sculptor even comes into play in my installations, in my wall hangings, in almost every other medium that I've tried to engage with. So that's why I like to regard myself as a sculptor.
In your work, you often employ and picture everyday objects and materials, imploring viewers of your work to recognize the beauty of the everyday. In works like Trace, Transactional Aesthetics, you draw attention to the aesthetics of the market in Nigeria and also across the global south.
I think the most important thing for me in visiting markets is actually the aesthetic way the wares are stacked and arranged. To me, they're like mini installations. They're a little bit architectonic. You see different products that have different textures, different colors. So for me, I view it from that perspective, and some of those things that I actually see in the market, I bring them back home and incorporate them into my work in the studio. So it's more of a visual aesthetic that appeals to me, as well as the structural and even sculptural to an extent.
In your sculpture, in wood, you often draw upon the visual language of uli. Uli often includes very organic, linear forms and is also characterized by a very elegant association between positive and negative space.
Yes.
Yeah. So what is the personal meaning of uli for you?
I don't know, for me, uli is, it's a form and a medium that allows spontaneity, allows intuition. Another thing I liked about the uli tradition was the palette, which is white, yellow, red, and black. All these are derivative from natural resources. And also earlier on in my career, I'd done a lot of studies with Aboriginal painting. And if you know a little bit about Aboriginal painting, they use a lot of traditional materials and palettes that have earth tones. So that was where the interest in using that as a palette in some of my works was derived from.
A lot of I'll say success of your work is in your ability to maintain a tension between kind of, order and chaos, as I mentioned in your work about markets, Trace, but then here a kind of tension between beauty and horror that makes it possible to even confront, the histories that you're trying to shed light on.
I think that tension between attraction and repulsion is, some of these topics are so heavy, they're so dark, that to even be able to talk about them is actually a bit of a strain and a stress, and you've got to find a way to sort of like pull people in. And I think that's one of the techniques I use in some of the installations that I use, or even the materiality and processes I use within my work are also avenues to, confront these deep and heavy topics.
I'd like to conclude with some of your thoughts on collaboration in your work.
I think generally, as an artist, I think it's always much nicer and it's more meaningful for not only you, but the culture sector in which you find yourself to work with other students and studio assistants whereby, you know, you have this collaboration, you have this interaction where you're actually learning from each other. There's a mutual benefit to both parties when you're working with studio assistants. And I think it's also important to work with assistants because you can also pass on your knowledge. It's also good to mentor the next generation.
I mean, that collaborative spirit in the studio is kind of a microcosm of what we hope, you know.
For the wider world, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Ndidi. It was a real pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you very much, Perrin. It was a pleasure for me too. It's been a wonderful discussion. Thank you.